If you just started playing umamusume on the global server, you've probably seen or heard this topic on wit training replacing rest, or the wit game. And there has been a massive amount of misinformation which has caused irreparable damage to players of the global umamusume community, ruining runs, careers, and players' expectations when it comes to the URA scenario. Yes, I am talking about this video over here. Hey guys, UmaPokke here, and I cannot stress this enough because at the end of the day, content creators, guide makers, streamers are all just human beings who can make mistakes. It is completely fine to do so and learn from those mistakes to better explore the umamusume information iceberg, especially if we just started on the global server. Now, I have nothing but love and respect for Static Nexus and his guides and efforts he puts into his content, but this particular one really missed the mark, especially from the perspective of a guide maker, which at the end of the day have a massive influence on the general community when looking for help, especially new players, and why there needs to be a little bit of accountability over here. I've watched the entire video, his thought process behind why spamming wit is better than rest, even if you run 0 wit cards, and his career run subsequently. We will be going into this strategy of how wit can replace rest, the problem with this strategy, as well as breaking down the actual career run itself. So do subscribe, like, and comment down below on your thoughts regarding this topic. So regarding this entire wit strategy to replace rest, the general sentiment is that resting is a wasted turn, since you will have no stat gain at all just for energy, while there are a lot of events in your support cards, your careers, that can give you free energy. Now, unfortunately, because they are ultimately RNG based, the only tool within your control is going to be your wits training. This is like free stats with speed, wit, friendship upgrade, and skill points, which once you do enough of, saves you the need for wasting a turn to rest and potentially even preventing you from getting afflicted with Night Owl. This means you will have a better rating and stats since you spend more turns training, which improves your overall score compared to someone who does rest instead of wit. He also mentioned not bringing any wit support cards and doing wit raw as a replacement for rest. In fact, if you are resting more than 8 times in your career, then, and I quote, unfortunately, you are losing that career. Before going into the full run itself, here are some of the sample Umas he has showed this strategy running 0 wit cards, which can be seen from these Ogly caps, keeping in mind the objective of these Oglys here are for Taurus Cup, which will be for 2400 meter. And to end it off, here is a preface saying that the support cards do not matter because the energy management will work regardless based on your account level, and the exact numbers will depend on your support cards and inheritance. So the run is just to show how training and energy management on using wit can replace rest, even if you're going to be running 0 wit cards. So with that, we're just gonna jump into this problem regarding the entire strategy. First and foremost, his thought process regarding energy management in umamusume is actually hitting the right spot. You want to try and minimize wasted turns from rest as much as you can, especially if your stats allow for it. In fact, wit training as a rest replacement is very strong for sprints as well as mouse, but not from the way this strategy was executed because its intention is completely misguided. Speed and wit decks are extremely viable and meta for shorter races like I mentioned before, especially for the upcoming Cancer Cup for our first ever mouse CM, where you hit a stat spread of high speed, high wit, as well as power for these non-stamina heavy races. Wit can and should be used as a replacement for rest in these shorter races, but if you are using wit just for the sake of skipping rest because there are more stats on wit while sacrificing other key stats like stamina, power, or to a certain extent even guts, and even races for your fan bonuses and white skills, then you are ultimately misguided about energy management in umamusume. I'm also holding Static Nexus to a higher degree of accountability than the general community because, as I've mentioned, guide makers in the space hold influence regarding on how Tolenas do their careers, and fixing misinformation like this will make the overall community a better place for everyone. And I'm also talking about this topic because a lot of people within my own community, as well as just general sentiments, have been going around with whether or not should you even be using this as a viable strategy to replace rest. This has also been established since day one from players across the servers in JP and Taiwan, and artificially inflating your wit just for high ratings are what kills your Umas since team trials for medium and long races. That being said, this isn't the main issue where using wit to replace rest is coming from, as we are going to be breaking this down into 2 even bigger problems. First of all, this is tied to one of perhaps the most fundamental concepts in the career run: your training facility levels. Attached below is a chart of how facility level scales in the game itself. So you can see speed, stamina, power, guts, and wisdom from the level 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 5 respectively. Now you might think that at a glance, the difference between a level 1 and level 5 training doesn't look that big, right? It's just 4 points from the main stat and 2 points from the substat. In reality, the difference is absolutely massive because these are your base stats before any bonuses. If you have played any mainstream gacha, you know that all attack, defense, scaling, or any sort of a bonus you are upgrading, you are going to be scaling based on your base stats. So even a small addition to them will cause substantial changes in the outcome of your results. I will cut out the boring math part, but the formula for calculating an expected training value is this over here. If you want to take a deep dive, feel free to pause this at any time, right? So it's going to be base value plus bonus stats times training effectiveness, friendship bonus, mood bonus, support in training, as well as a character stat bonus. This means that a difference from, let's just say, a level 1 speed training and a level 5 speed training for a single rainbow event using one MLB Kira-san Black will be as follows over here. For level 1, your speed will be 19 and your power will be at 11, whereas for level 5, your speed will go 26 and your power will be 15. So you can see that from a single rainbow training, you're effectively getting 29% more speed and 27% more power respectively. Now this might seem a little bit bad because you're going to be talking about level 1 and level 5, but it gets even worse because rainbow effects stacks on additively. This means that any bonuses you have from 2, 3, or even 4 rainbows will add in their respective fields for training effectiveness, friendship bonus, and mood bonus. So let's say a double rainbow event triggers for Kira-san Black as well as an MLB sweep Tosho, then the numbers will be as follows. For level 1, your speed will be 28 and your power will be at 17, and for level 5, this goes to 39 and 22 respectively. Do you see it? The stats you gain from a double rainbow level 1 speed training is almost the same as a single rainbow at level 5 speed. So imagine every single time you're spamming wits training for free energy recovery, but the entire time your facilities are at a much lower level compared to someone who has rested and training the stats they wanted, like for example speed or stamina. The difference will literally be night and day, despite the latter wasting turns resting. To be fair, you realistically will not be a level 1 facility since you will still do the other trainings, so let's take a look using his own career run where the speed facility is still level 2 by senior late June. As you can see over here, with a Sweep Tosho, Super Creek, Kira-san Black, and a Director, this was 46 speed and 23 power using a level 2 facility. Keep in mind, every single one of his cards are also going to be at max limit break. Now compare this to a free-to-play account with MLB, Manhattan Cafe, as well as Kira-san Black, getting roughly 73% of his double rainbow 4-man training because my facilities level were much higher at the exact same time frame of senior late June. Also, don't ask me why he's not resting before summer. With facilities level importance being explained, welcome to the second and perhaps an even worse part of the strategy, which is using wit to replace rest while running a speed and stamina deck. As mentioned before, this is fun if you're using a speed wits deck that can give you energy recovery on wits training like Agnes, Taegyo, and Fine Motion, giving 4 and 5 energy respectively. Meaning each time you do a wits training, this recovery will literally be double or even triple the original plus 5 energy for wit training. But to do this in a standard speed and stamina deck for Taurus and God forbid Gemini Cup would literally take you 10 turns of wit training with no energy bonus for a single turn of rest that gives you 50 energy. Keep in mind, RNG events like supports, careers are available to any decks, so the real amount of energy from wit training is far lesser than just resting for literally a single turn, especially if you're doing it on a speed and stamina deck. Doing this will not only give you far less energy per training as well as facility levels, you are also missing potential speed and stamina rainbows because you either have no energy to them or you're constantly spamming wit plus 5 energy instead of a proper rest. Combining all of the aforementioned problems, doing this strategy can be best described as spraying deodorant when your umas really need to take a shower. It is ineffective, it's a waste of deodorant, and frankly speaking, your umas will still stink unless that deodorant is really strong. Sure, you can get decent stats, especially with good inheritance and support cards, but you can get far better with more important stats and skills should you have just rested instead. And this is where we get into the career review where he showcased during the actual run itself. Again, as I've mentioned before, wit to replace rest is viable, but only for shorter races and with wit cards to supplement your energy recovery. If you're using decks like speed and stamina, use what the decks are intended for. This is also a review with nothing but the intention of correcting the mistakes in his decision making so that everyone can learn together, especially if you have watched this video and was intending to follow his strategy. I will not be covering the run in its entirety, but just the key points on why his strategy was far from ideal. With all due respect and love, if not for his inheritance and support decks, this career run using the exact same decision would result in an extremely subpar career run for especially an Ace Uma. So going to the start of this actual run, you can see that he is going to be running a full 18-star stamina inheritance, one from borrowed and one naturally obtained. This plays a far more impactful role than he gives credit for, especially for Ogre Cap, because he's only running 2 stamina cards with 0% stamina bonus for Ogre. Without this 18-star stamina, this entire run will almost certainly never hit the stamina checks when using wit training, as you're going to be seeing when you take a look into his career run itself. And jumping into the deck itself, whether or not he's using max limit break SRs, max limit break SSRs, whether they are relatable or not, is not going to be the main focus of this topic, and he even mentioned that the purpose of this is to show how wit training can replace rest. If you do not have similar copies, expect your runs to have a worse result, so not much explanation is going to be needed over there, right? More money, more copies equals to more stats. But the main point is, the cards used here are actually fine. They are decent choices for a medium race, although 4 speed may be a slight overkill since Ogre has a built-in 20% speed. This is also why I prefer running Power Parents instead and running a 3 speed 3 stamina split to hit the stamina and speed breakpoints while having a higher power for medium racers, which we'll see later is a problem running this build as well. So jumping into the actual run itself, once again, I'm not going to be showing through everything, but just some key pointers during the moments of his career and just a little bit of a pointers that you guys can take a look and reference for yourself and as to see why this thought process could be better improved. So one example over here is going to be this food event from Ogre Kapu, which is going to be the same for every other Uma. These will appear nothing to do with wit training, but I do want to use this opportunity to show how it inflates the impact of wit training recovery, since I will argue more than 50% of the energy actually came from events, and the numerous wit training gaining only +5 energy in the long run would lead to an overall worse stat spread compared to a single rest and upgrading of facilities, as I've mentioned in the problems previously. Not wit training related as well, but at this point over here, he also made a really scary mistake of skipping the previous races and only going for hopeful stakes in late December to hit his fan count. Never ever do this, especially if you are using borrowed parents, because there's always a chance for you to lose this race no matter how strong you are, which can literally end the entire career. If you have played McQueen, this also has a very similar issue, so I'll always have to do at least 2 races for this goal in order to prevent myself from potentially losing out the entire career, especially if you have borrowed them and you only have 3 borrows in a single day. And another point, PS, Corner Connoisseur is really bad for a skill for almost every single track, especially for Taurus and Gemini, because in summary, acceleration at moments before your mid and end spurts are basically useless, so never ever get this skill. Then this is gonna be the main portion of why I'm discussing how this career run basically illustrates why wit training will never really replace your rest. If you need a rest, just go and rest. If you want to do it with a speed and wit deck, right? So you can see it from these 6 turns, right? These are the perfect 6 turns to show why this strategy is so inefficient, starting all the way from a classic early February, ending around right before summer. He took 4 turns of wit training to gain 20 energy, 25 speed, and 76 speed. In these 4 turns, the following things happened. One had literally 0 support cards, one had a max friendship sweep Tosho, he skipped a double rainbow, but to be fair, it was 20% failure. He lost every single potential upgrade to his training facility with 0 stamina and power, which are both, like I mentioned, very important stats, especially for stamina during your medium and long races, and you literally gained less energy than a 30 energy rest during these 4 turns of wit training. Should he have just went for a rest, and let's just say this rest at a 250 energy that would have easily added roughly the same amount of speed in a single training, more facility levels, and more turns to potentially upgrade your stamina, power, or perhaps friendships if any of his cards at this point were not max leveled, which would definitely be the case if you didn't hit the lucky support rooms to upgrade your friendship to max before your classic summer. This is also gonna be viable for players who do not have multiple copies of SRs and SSRs. So for example, Super Creek at Limit Break 0 has basically almost close to 0 friendship, which is why friendship training during your junior year is very, very important as well. And then the next 2 turns after these 4 wit training were absolute, for lack of a better word, absolute cinema, right? Absolute cinema. He hit a lucky triple rainbow for a very, very nice 62 speed and 23 power on level 1 training facility. But afterwards, he had to skip the next double rainbow of 35 and 19 because that was at a 22% chance of failure. And then he went back for even more weird training. First of all, his speed facility is still level 1 at classic year, and had this went from level 1 to level 3 or maybe even level 2, that stat again on the triple rainbow would have easily added at least 20, 25 or perhaps even 30 stats across speed and power. Effectively, this means you have basically wasted an entire turn of value because your trainings were much less efficient because of this level 1 facility. Secondly, he only gains 5 energy per wit for a total of 20 energy, and subsequently the next double rainbow had to be skipped because of the 22% failure rate, resulting in a loss of 25 speed and 19 power because he went back for even more wit training. And lastly, this was right before his NHK top 5 placement, which is going to be his career goal. This means that he literally cannot even rest for the turn after this. And true enough, he's finally out of gas and had to rest on the turn with a stamina rainbow. The one stat that would definitely be lacking if you're using this strategy without strong stamina inheritance or MLB Super Quick. So this will be an ongoing process for the rest of his runs, especially I would say that this example, it perfectly illustrates why you can see this entire strategy of using wit to replace rest is extremely inefficient. At best, you get a semi-decent ace for a CM with your stronger inheritance and support cards, but at worst, the entire run was just a waste of 30 TP as well as friend borrow, especially if you were unlucky or if you just simply do not have stronger inheritance and support cards. Now, some other things during the rest of the run are also very questionable, like this random level 1 guards training on Senior March, or skipping a 14% stamina for a wit training with 0 support cards. Keep in mind, he still needs to win 1 more G1 to complete his goal for the senior, and there's only 2 G1s left before summer, which is early June as well as late June. If he loses the early June G1, he will be forced to race again during late June, which will bring us to a moment I almost respectfully, with really all due respect, I almost crashed out when I saw this. So if this was a channel by someone like Mr. Pokke, he would have probably underreacted and screamed and cried and raged and just slammed his desk like whatever. But UmaPokke is a very chill guy, so let's just see exactly what happened here before senior summer. He won the early June G1, and with around 30 energy before summer, he went back for another race at Takarazuka despite clearing his goals and entered into summer with 0 energy. Literally 0 energy. With all due love and respect, and to anyone watching this video, if your career runs ever see this screen over here with a 99% failure on the first turn of summer, it has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with pay to win, it has nothing to do with inheritance, it is literally 100,000% skill issue. You should never ever see this screen for like your entire training career, no matter what sort of Umas you're going to be running. And this led to his senior summer having 2 turns spent on rest, 1 on wit, and luckily we do hit 1 triple rainbow throughout this entire summer. Now, as you guys would have known by now, summers are essentially one of the most important time during this entire career because all of your training facilities are gonna be at max level 5, which means that getting any double or triple rainbows during your summer is gonna give you far more value for any of these other trainings, especially if you're gonna be lagging behind in your stats. Going to this example, this is technically not going to be caused by his wit training. It is simply a very poor decision to not rest and go for another race going into summer with 0 energy, right? But that being said, please always go into summer with max energy, especially because you're going to be going for an ace run over here. Now, luckily for his actual run itself, he was not punished with all of the triple rainbows following towards the end of the career, on top of winning the last 61% failure, which goes against everything that players have been taught to do. You never ever gamble on a fail rate as high as this, because if you really would have failed, this entire run would have been wasted. And this all the more just goes to show why umamusume is ultimately a probability game. With enough luck and money, even if you make the wrong choices, you can still gain decent results. And that's why I made a previous video, because these are the exact scenarios I want to try and prevent the player base to do, right? You shouldn't be relying on your luck and money, but improve your decision making, so over time you can still compete against others who lack the said knowledge. As he reaches the end of his career, note that this was the result done with this deck, but he also shows the result from other runs, which I'm not too sure if it's gonna be done with the exact same deck over here, or if he used other cards, because this run's width was very high due to the support cards roaming to width according to him. So I will just focus on this run's actual results. So first of all, he failed one of the fan checks, which is really going to be required for your director, which means that his ultimate is going to be one less level. Second of all, corner 0, like I mentioned, is completely ass, never ever get this skill. Third of all, 800 width is really high, especially for a medium and long race. So looking at this over here, you're only gonna be getting 794 stamina and 679 power. Power being this stat that's just really low, right? So if you're gonna be trying this strategy, it will literally never work for long races like this upcoming Gemini Cup. And the only reason why he was able to hit a decent amount of stamina for this Taurus Cup is because he has access to an 18-star stamina inheritance, right? You can beat around the bush, you can say what you want, because if you're only gonna be running a 2 support card deck, having those 18-star inheritance on stamina was absolutely pivotal to hitting the stamina checkpoints. And despite that, you can see over here the power is going to be a lot lower, which means when it comes to acceleration, this Uma is likely not going to be competing with other Umas with a similar result, running a similar round of investment, and they're going to just simply outpower you because they did not invest that much into your width. The speed is actually very nice here, because we do gain the 1200 speed with a 4-2 split on full limit break, SSR and SSRs, and on top of that you have all of the triple rainbows, so you basically did not get punished despite missing an entire summer. So imagine what could have happened if this deck actually went with the proper decision making, with the proper investment, as well as just resting in time. You're probably gonna be looking at an Ogre running somewhere around 1200 speed, 800 stamina, most ideally 800 power, maybe close to 400 guards, as well as 400 width, right? That would be a far stronger Ogre Kapu for any sort of scenario, especially if you're going to be, for example, talking about Taurus Cup. I'm not going to be discussing the skills as well as the distance and the style not getting medium S, turf or whatever, because that's literally just because of RNG, but to a certain extent it also matters, because getting those inheritance for the relevant white sparks and pink sparks, they are far more difficult compared to getting, like, for example, getting stamina alone, right? So this means that if you're somebody that wants to hit the medium S, right, wants to hit the style or track S, especially for a medium S for a distance, this means that most probably your stamina or your power sparks are not going to be getting that full 18-star, which is completely fair, and that's all the more reason why this strategy is going to crumble even more, especially once you want to go into the better style, distance, and track pacing with the relevant white skills, right? So for example, if you want an Uma with, let's just say, 3-star stamina with like 3-star long, 3-star playtime is over, you are a finale, straight away spur, patience, all the kind of stuff. Or if you just go for a pure stamina blue star, you can see why the latter is going to be a lot easier, which is how it compels this build to even take place in the first place, right? So with that, I'm going to come into the end of this video. Once again, like I mentioned, this video is done with nothing but all love, peace, happiness, respect, and just to correct a little bit more of the misinformation, which I would say is very rampant going on in the community right now. You cannot and should not be replacing rest with width, especially if you're going to be running a speed stamina deck. This is only viable for sprints and mouse with a good deck inheritance, as well as the fact that you're actually running a speed width deck, right? So with that, I'm going to be coming to the end of this content. Let me know what you guys in the comments below. Hopefully, we're going to be able to see some sort of a follow-up and just see how misguided this entire guy really is, with all due respect, So all the best for our gacha pools, all the best for our CM careers, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.